Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, and today I'm talking about Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy by John Le Carré, or Le Carré, or however you pronounce the last name of his pen name. John Cornwall, I think, is his given name. Anyways, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. This book is a long time coming for me, and what I mean by that is I have attempted to read this book over the course of, gosh, probably well over 10 years now. Um, it's been story. I mean, the idea of, as this book asks, who can spy on the spies, hunting a mole, in this stage of uh, England in the 1970s. It's been a story that has fascinated me for so long. And about 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit uh, longer than that, I saw the 2011 film adaptation of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Um, at the time, again, my familiarity with Le Carre's works was an attempt at the spy who came in from the cold. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. This is the first novel I've read of his completely all the way through. There might have been one or two other attempts with the spy who came in from the cold, and that's it so far. But this is the first of many more to come. Anyways, I had seen the 2011 film adaptation with Gary Oldman as George Smiley, and I really enjoyed it. And the book is certainly better. The book, I think, dives into the true heart of the narrative because, yes, even though this is an espionage novel, anybody who is at least somewhat familiar with this story, with the BBC miniseries with Alec Guinness, the recent film adaptation, is that the character of George Smiley, the setting of the circus, is constructed in a way that is what I read that Le Carré meant this to be an antidote to James Bond. I love James Bond. I love all the James Bond films and stories, but I can understand that. James Bond is certainly not realistic to what espionage of really any era has looked like. It doesn't quite get that over the top. So when you have somebody like George Smiley, somebody who is old or on the older side, has kind of been forced out and has to rely on what is on the surface level almost like a low key and practically, by the way that Smiley goes about it, almost a matter of fact investigation into figuring out who the mole is. uh, it makes for an absolutely delicious read. I think is the best way to describe Le Carre's prose. It's so good, and it is so rich that I'm sure I would get so much more from this on a second, third, maybe even fourth read, and I did very much so enjoy this. This version. It's a Penguin Modern Classics version. I really love the green kind of wraparound with this. I picked this up when I was in London last year. Just I saw it at an airport, and I figured, um, I I had attempted it in the past. It's right before me now. Why not jump on it and read it? And while I didn't, read it right after when I was in London, which would have been kind of cool to kind of cross reference, I've read it now. Um, so the basic setup for the plot of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, for those perhaps unfamiliar with it. This novel is set in primarily in London in the early 1970s, and what is the stand-in for MI6? It's nicknamed the Circus, and there is an old spy master named George Smiley, he's kind of been forced into retirement. He's part of an older guard led by kind of their previous leader, uh, code-named or nicknamed Control, who has passed away, and a new guard, Bill Hayden, Percy Allaline, Toby Esterhazy, and Roy Bland. Those are the four big figures in that group. They have kind of taken over, forced everybody out. Peter Gillam is one of the older guard. Peter Gillam's a fantastic character. But one day, Smiley's he's pulled out of retirement, as many of these kinds of stories are. He's pulled out of retirement by government officials when a field agent has potentially caught up with something very big. And the big thing is a reveal that the Moscow Center, so the stand-in for the KGB, so MI6 or I know that there's MI6 and MI5. I think MI6 is the foreign dealings, kind of like their espionage. MI5 might be more domestic for the UK. Any UK viewers out there, and if I'm getting the difference between them wrong, that MI5 is more domestic, MI6 is for international affairs, let me know. Anyway, so I believe it's MI6 versus the KGB, KGB being referred to as the center, Moscow Center, and within the center is Smiley's counterpart, a man, a fellow, a Russian spy master, nickname or codenamed Karla. And Ricky Tarr, who is this field agent, gets information from a woman who is the wife of a Russian individual who he's been kind of tracking a little bit, where she confesses to him that the Moscow Center has a mole within the circus. Somebody big, somebody at the top, somebody who's been there for a while. And that is almost that is the surface level of this book. You shouldn't go into this, or I'm sure any other of Le Carré's works, expecting a rip-roaring adventure book. This is certainly not that. But what it is a fascinating look into what this type of profession does to individuals and how it wears on them, how it ages them, how they view themselves, how they start to view others as a result. And a lot of those ideas and that takeaway from this book started to come to me, a good, maybe about halfway through the book. Two characters, George Smiley and Peter Gillam, are having this conversation with one another, and Smiley is talking about a time years and years before where he met Karla, when he thought that Karla might defect, and where he was trying to wear him down. He was trying to get him to give him information to help him defect. Karla just wasn't budging, and finally Smiley talks to him about, we're both looking for the weaknesses in each other, and it's the same. We might be, our nations might be ideologically opposed, but it's still the same. It's still the same thing. We're both worn thin. There are people who will angle for power to get ahead of us, and we'll be put out to pasture someday. And there's so much in not knowing who all is on your side, and at some point, not necessarily not caring, but there's an ambivalence that comes across. Smiley has an ambivalence, but it's almost like he's a soldier who has lost the faith. but still does what must be done. I mean, primarily because it seems like he feels a duty to the old guard, the old ways of doing things in order to protect pretty much the memory of control is what he's, in pursuit of this mole. And he, I mean, there's so much, especially when it gets to the end, and when the nature of the mole is revealed and individuals feel betrayed. It's, when they think they know somebody, and even when they're having these adversaries are having these conversations, and they're so matter of fact, they're so nonchalant, it's like they'd be discussing sports games or something. But and I don't know if that's a testament to the British stiff upper lip or whatever that might be, but it's fascinating to see this George Smiley, Peter Gillam to an extent as well, being an aging cohort or part of an old guard, uh, being shunted out, and the new guard coming in, not necessarily being all idealistic, but angling perhaps in somewhat of a political sense in order to uh, retain some power. And that's a little bit of it. Um, but that adds to the richness of the world, and it's hard to describe. It's just the sentiment that you get from reading this, and it's profound loss almost. There's a reference to Russian nesting dolls at the end of this book, and I think in looking up, reading a little bit more about the background of this book online, I think the first edition cover of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, it was an image of Russian nesting dolls, and of course that ties in so well, not only because Russian nesting dolls are referred to essentially as a metaphor in this book, but you have the outer casing of the person, and less and less and less and less, whether this profession whittles them down. There's a character in this book, Jim Prideaux, who is a teacher at a boarding school, and he's somebody who has lost the faith so entirely, at least for most of it, and he's lost. There's just such tremendous loss that he has experienced, both clearly with his profession, but also personally. Smiley even has that as well. His wife, Anne, has kind of run away with another man. He's feeling betrayed. Peter Gillam has that with a lot of it has to deal with the loves in their life, or as one character calls it towards the end, in not in illusion, but let me see how it's referred to at the end. Illusion. Was that really Karla's name for love? Things like that. The illusions that get in the way, that cloud the mind, that inform the passions and the decisions of an individual, but that can destroy them all the same. And they're left just kind of doing their job still. But there's not to say there's tremendous tragedy or sorrow that kind of is underneath all of these characters, but that it is taking away from that, really understanding that as the book concludes, that makes me want to go back and read it all over again. But again, this book, it's very much so a slow burn. It's a lot of individuals in rooms talking, finding out information. Slowly but surely, the pieces of the puzzle are laid bare and they are assembled. It helped me at least remember, having a passing familiarity with the material, given that I saw the the film a number of years ago. I would recommend starting with the book, obviously, because you get the full story. I have yet to see the Alec Guinness miniseries, but I hope to soonish. I think I've seen that. It's somebody posted the whole thing to YouTube, so that's great. Um, yeah, it's just it's a fantastic book. I don't know if the next thing I'll read by Le Carré will be The Honorable Schoolboy, which is the next in the Karla trilogy, or if I'll read. I have a mind to maybe read something like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Constant Gardener, maybe a book like that. But yeah, this book, it's my highest recommendation if you're looking for, you know, a different kind of thriller, a thriller that is that is very character focused and lets you sink into the world, um, but still has all the great hallmarks of this type of espionage fiction as you may understand it from something like, not to compare it to James Bond because I get that that's what Le Carré wasn't going for, but something like that where it has that hook of a story, but it's told in such a different manner. It is the absolute antithesis of many of those things while being a good extension. And obviously, Le Carré is so well versed within this world because he worked in it for a while. He worked in MI5 and MI6. So, yeah, I mean, this book gets my highest recommendation. If you have read Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, or any of Le Carré's novels, let me know what you think of them. And as always, I will see you guys next time.